The Pacific island of Iwo Jima is only 8 square miles, yet the battle for it proved to be one of the bloodiest of World War II.
Veteran breaks silence on what they hid in the tunnels of Iwo Jima. It's bad. In 1945, beneath Iwo Jima, a U.S. veteran entered tunnels that didn't match official reports. Decades later, his account points to sealed sections, hidden chambers, and discoveries that were never fully explained. The veteran who finally spoke. Decades after the battle in 1945, a surviving U.S. soldier who fought on Iwo Jima began sharing details that were never included in official reports. His account described moments after American forces secured sections of the island, when small units were ordered to enter underground tunnel systems. These weren't simple bunkers. According to his recollection, some passages extended far deeper than expected, with layouts that didn't match standard military fortifications. The conditions inside were disorienting: tight spaces, low light, and routes that split into multiple directions. What stood out most in his account was not the structure, but what happened in certain areas. He described reaching sealed sections that had been intentionally blocked, even during active combat operations. These were not destroyed by bombing or collapsed naturally. They appeared to have been closed off deliberately. Orders were given to avoid opening them, and in some cases, entrances were reinforced rather than explored. By around 1950 interviews, fragments of similar accounts appeared among other veterans, but they were never formally connected or investigated in detail. The veteran's description suggests that parts of the underground network were not fully examined, even after control of the island was secured. This creates a gap between what was built, what was found, and what was officially recorded. His account doesn't provide a final explanation, but it introduces a detail that shifts the understanding of the tunnels, from a defensive system to something that may have contained areas intentionally left unexplored. The underground fortress Japan built. During the lead-up to the battle, General Tadamichi Kuribayashi oversaw the construction of one of the most complex defensive systems of World War II on Iwo Jima. Instead of relying on visible defenses, he focused on building an extensive underground network designed to withstand heavy bombardment. By early 1945, this system stretched over 18 kilometers, connecting artillery positions, command centers, and hidden access points across the island. The tunnels were carved directly into volcanic rock, making them extremely durable against surface attacks. This design changed how the battle unfolded. American forces, expecting to disable defenses through air and naval bombardment, found that much of the infrastructure remained intact beneath the surface. The tunnels allowed movement without exposure, enabling defenders to reposition and launch attacks from unexpected locations. Inside, the network included not only firing positions, but also storage areas, medical rooms, and operational spaces that functioned independently from the surface. The scale and structure of this system effectively turned the island into a layered battlefield, where much of the activity occurred underground. By the time US forces gained control, large sections of the network remained intact, but difficult to fully map. This complexity meant that not every area could be explored in detail. The fortress wasn't just defensive, it was self-contained, designed to operate beneath the surface for extended periods, leaving behind a structure that extended beyond what was immediately visible during the battle. What soldiers expected versus reality. When US forces landed on Iwo Jima in February 1945, they expected resistance from visible positions: trenches, bunkers, and fortified hills. Instead, the battlefield behaved differently. Japanese forces did not hold fixed positions. They moved unseen through underground routes, emerging from hidden exits behind advancing units. Reports from US Marines described sudden attacks from directions that had already been cleared, creating confusion across multiple positions. The terrain offered no clear front line, and the island itself became unpredictable. To counter this, soldiers began using flamethrowers and explosives to clear tunnel entrances, but even that proved limited. Destroying one opening did not stop movement, as the tunnels connected to multiple exit points. In some areas, troops reported hearing voices, footsteps, and activity beneath them long after the surface had been secured. These sounds came from deeper levels that were not visible or accessible. By March 1945, the realization had spread that the underground system was far more extensive than initial intelligence suggested. The battlefield was no longer just above ground, it extended into layers that could not be fully seen or controlled. The sections that were never mapped. After the battle ended in 1945, US engineers began the process of documenting the tunnel network beneath Iwo Jima. What they found was incomplete. Many sections had been collapsed during combat, either by bombing or intentional destruction. Others appeared to have been sealed deliberately from within. These blocked passages prevented full access, making it impossible to create a complete map of the system. Even with detailed surveys, large portions remained unexplored. Some of the tunnels that were accessible did not follow standard military layouts. Instead of connecting directly to defensive positions, certain branches extended into areas with no clear combat purpose. Reports from engineering units noted irregular structures, sections that didn't align with known strategies or expected designs. These findings suggested that parts of the network may have served additional functions beyond defense. By 1946 reports, documentation efforts had already begun to slow, as the complexity of the underground system made full exploration difficult. What remained was a partially mapped structure, with gaps that could not be fully explained or accessed. The rooms that didn't make sense. As soldiers moved deeper into the tunnel systems beneath Iwo Jima in 1945, some reported entering chambers that did not resemble standard military spaces. These were not storage rooms or command posts. According to accounts recorded in later 1950 interviews, certain chambers contained unusual equipment, arranged in ways that didn't match known battlefield needs. Containers were found sealed, with no markings indicating their purpose, and some areas appeared organized for controlled activity rather than combat operations. What made these rooms stand out was their condition. Unlike other parts of the tunnel system, which showed signs of prolonged use, these chambers often looked abandoned in haste. Equipment was left behind, but not destroyed. This suggested a rapid evacuation rather than a planned shutdown. In some cases, entrances to these sections were partially sealed from the inside, as if the occupants intended to prevent further access. Reports from US Marines described uncertainty about whether to explore these areas or leave them untouched, especially when their purpose was unclear. No official documentation was released detailing the contents of these chambers. This absence created a gap between what was encountered and what was recorded. By 1946 records, only general descriptions of the tunnel network remained, with no detailed inventory of unusual sections. The difference between standard military spaces and these isolated chambers suggests that not all parts of the underground system were designed for direct combat use. The chemical and biological fear. During World War II, Japan had documented involvement in chemical and biological research programs, though much of that activity was associated with mainland operations. However, some veterans from Iwo Jima later described experiences inside tunnels that raised concern. Reports from 1945 accounts mention unusual smells in certain sections, along with physical reactions such as irritation or breathing discomfort after exposure. These details were not consistent across all areas, but they appeared in enough accounts to draw attention. In response to these conditions, some units began using protective measures when entering deeper sections of the tunnels. While not standard procedure for all operations, this adjustment suggests that soldiers encountered environments they considered potentially hazardous. The absence of official confirmation left these experiences unverified, but they remained part of personal accounts recorded in later years. By 1952 reports, similar descriptions had surfaced in separate testimonies, though they were never formally connected into a single conclusion. These observations led to the possibility that certain materials stored underground were not intended to be handled during or after the battle. If hazardous substances were present, sealing parts of the tunnel system would have been a practical response. This would explain why some areas were left inaccessible rather than fully explored. The combination of environmental reactions and restricted access points suggests that at least some sections of the underground network were treated differently from standard military zones. The orders to seal everything. After the fighting ended in March 1945, US forces faced a decision about what to do with the vast tunnel network beneath Iwo Jima. Instead of fully excavating every section, many entrances were deliberately sealed. Explosives were used to collapse key access points, especially in areas considered unstable or difficult to secure. The official reasoning focused on safety, preventing hidden ambushes, and ensuring that no remaining threats could emerge from underground. On the surface, this aligned with standard military procedure following a battle of that scale. However, accounts from some US Marines suggest that not every section was thoroughly inspected before being sealed. In certain cases, entrances were closed without full exploration of what lay beyond. These decisions were made quickly, often under pressure to stabilize the island and move forward with operations. By 1946 reports, documentation acknowledged the scale of the tunnel system, but did not detail every sealed section. This left gaps in what was known versus what remained underground. The result was a permanent closure of parts of the network that had never been fully mapped or understood. Whether this was purely strategic or influenced by unknown conditions inside those tunnels remains unclear. What is certain is that large portions of the underground system were intentionally left inaccessible, preserving whatever remained inside without further investigation. The missing records. In the years following World War II, military documentation of major operations was typically detailed and extensive. However, when it came to the tunnel systems beneath Iwo Jima, the records appear incomplete. While general reports describe the structure and scale of the underground network, detailed maps and inventories of specific findings were never fully released. This stands in contrast to other operations from 1945, where documentation was far more thorough. Within archived material, there are references to surveys and engineering assessments, but they often lack depth regarding what was discovered inside certain sections. Some documents are partially redacted, while others simply do not include detailed descriptions of underground chambers. By 1950 archives, these gaps had already become noticeable, especially when compared to the level of detail available for surface operations. The absence of complete records does not confirm any specific conclusion, but it does highlight that not all information was preserved or made accessible. This lack of detail has continued to shape how the tunnels are understood. Without full documentation, the underground system remains only partially explained, with certain aspects relying on limited reports and personal accounts rather than complete official records. The psychological impact on soldiers. Fighting on Iwo Jima during February 1945 placed US troops in conditions unlike any previous battlefield. The enemy was often invisible, moving through underground tunnels that allowed sudden and unpredictable attacks. For many US Marines, this created a constant sense of uncertainty. Even when areas appeared secured, movement could still be heard beneath the surface. Reports from 1945 accounts describe footsteps, voices, and distant activity echoing through the ground, making it difficult to determine where threats were coming from. This environment changed how soldiers experienced combat. Instead of facing a visible front line, they were surrounded by unknown space below them. Some described the tunnels as if they were alive, not because of anything supernatural, but because of the constant unseen movement. The idea that entire sections remained hidden beneath their feet added pressure that extended beyond physical danger. By 1946 reports, it was noted that even after the battle ended, many soldiers avoided entering deeper tunnel sections unless absolutely necessary. The experience was not limited to combat itself. It continued afterward, shaping how the battlefield was remembered. The tunnels became more than a structure. They represented an environment where control was never fully achieved, what might still be there today. Even today, large parts of the tunnel system beneath Iwo Jima remain inaccessible. The island's volcanic structure makes excavation unstable, with sections prone to collapse under minimal disturbance. After 1945, many entrances were sealed, either intentionally or through damage caused during the battle. This means that entire portions of the underground network have not been explored since the end of World War II. Efforts to map the system have been limited by both safety concerns and the complexity of the terrain. Modern surveys have improved understanding of surface structures, but the deeper tunnel networks remain only partially mapped. Some sections are believed to extend beyond the areas originally documented, but verifying this requires access that is not always possible. By 2020 surveys, technology such as ground scanning has provided partial insights, yet it cannot fully replace direct exploration. If any materials, equipment, or undiscovered chambers remain inside those sealed areas, they have stayed undisturbed for decades. The combination of sealed entrances, unstable terrain, and incomplete mapping leaves parts of the island's underground system unchanged since the time it was first built and used. What was built beneath Iwo Jima in 1945 was never fully uncovered, and what was sealed was never completely explained. Accounts from US Marines, combined with gaps in 1946 records, point to sections of the tunnel system that were left untouched for reasons that went beyond strategy alone. The island was secured, but the underground network remained partially closed, preserving whatever was inside. Over time, the surface became quiet, but below it, entire pathways stayed hidden, unchanged since the end of World War II. What remains is not just a battlefield, but a structure that was never fully explored.